Without further ado, this is obviously the issue of distribution is one of the most pressing issues facing the industry, and there isn't a better man to talk about this than our own Scott Kirzner of Variety and Cinematech. So take it away, Scott.
We're all really excited to be here. I think with 7 panelists and 8 microphones up here, we kind of look like an a cappella group or something. I don't know. We're like the Capitol Steps here to do our special inauguration show. So thank you all for coming. I think we're going to have a really good session. I want to try to get in as many questions from you as we can. But to get the conversation going, I kind of want to do 2 things, and that's talk about what's working right now and what's not working in regards to theatrical and DVD and internet and other kinds of distribution. And second is talk about kind of where we are today and where we're heading. And I think something that'll work out to be really interesting is that we have 2 filmmakers and some of their supporting characters up here who had films in the 2008 Sundance Festival, Ballast and Good Dick. And so we can talk a little bit about what's happened with those 2 films on the distribution front. And just by way of introduction, Jeffrey mentioned I am a writer for Variety, kind of on issues of technology and new business models. I run a blog called Cinematech, and it wouldn't be Sundance if there wasn't a little bit of shilling. My latest book is Inventing the Movies. It's a technological history of the cinema, kind of from the days of Edison to the era of the iPod and YouTube. And I guess since Stephen, my younger brother, is staring at me, I'll start intros from this end. Stephen Raphael is from Required Viewing. He's been involved with movies you likely have seen, like Favela Rising and Wrist Cutters, A Love Story. One down, we have MJ Picos. She's from Metropolis Films. She also has been CEO of Tartan Films and is still president of Dada Films, so someone who wears many hats. One to the right, Christian Gaines is director of festivals for Without a Box, which many of you are familiar with. They're part of Internet Movie Database, which in turn is part of Amazon.com. And he's also the former director of AFI Fest. To my left, Connie White from Balcony Releasing. She's also the artistic director of the Provincetown International Film Festival, great festival on Cape Cod, and has been a longtime booker for many art house cinemas around the country. To my right, Cora Olson is producer of Good Dick and The Babysitter, and we're going to talk a little bit about sort of Good Dick's theatrical and home video distribution strategies. One more down, we have Lance Hammer. He was the director of Ballast, which was part of the festival last year, and also worked as an art director on many other films. And finally, Matt Dentler. He works at Cinetic Rights Management in New York. He is a former producer of the South by Southwest Film Festival and a prolific blogger. So you should check out his blog on IndieWire.
I'm blogging right now.
He is. He's got Twitter built into his badge there. So the question I'd like to open with, and anyone can jump in. We're not going to do the standard panel thing of going down the line, playing Duck, Duck, Goose. But if you were to highlight one thing that's changing right now in the distribution universe, and either that's creating opportunities or creating challenges, what would that be? Kind of what's the most important moving piece of the puzzle right now? The most important thing that feels like it's in transition?
The internet.
Yeah, I mean, I think speaking towards, not speaking towards in the theatrical model, which other people on the panel can certainly speak better about or more accurately about, but I think that what you're seeing more than ever is technology is finally kind of catching up with consumer expectations. You know, the reason online video is actually working now is because there are pipes that can actually support it. I know there's lots of naysayers who think, oh, well, you know, didn't we try online video before? In fact, there's a documentary at this festival kind of about that called We Live in Public. But the fact of the matter is now you can access entertainment in a way that has never been possible ever in the history of technology.
And so, Lance, when you say the internet is the most important thing that's changing, a lot of filmmakers kind of sort of pay lip service to the internet, and they say, well, clearly lots of people are watching short videos on the internet, but you know, I get this sense from filmmakers that they don't feel like there's real money there yet.
I don't think there is right now, but it's changing so quickly. Just in the 1 year since last Sundance till now, that just Matt was talking about the pipeline and the technologies, the relationships of, say, what Netflix has done with LG and with You know, they just announced this LG television
Yep.
connection, and they have the LG Blu-ray, and then Amazon has their. I mean, every company is quickly making connections to have a box to get the thing off of your computer onto a very nice display, and so. But I'm thinking, you know, that's one end of it. But what's perhaps even more important is the ability to use the internet to create awareness and to market your film, and using social media technologies to do that very early on. Again, it's something that's so nascent, and I honestly haven't done a lot with it. But it's the most important part of the program for in my opinion.
Maybe Connie, if you would talk a little bit about, I mean, in the world of sort of traditional theatrical exhibition, is nothing changing? Is that kind of just totally static?
No, I was thinking about the question because you've given it to us in advance, and I mean, I think a positive thing is that's changing in theatrical is maybe marketing and expectations that that the cinemas have from filmmakers and distributors. Traditionally, there was expectations for big advertising buys, display advertising, which you know, ridiculous amounts of money for New York Times ads and Boston Globe ads, whatever, that were required just to get your film opened into a theater. And I think more and more cinemas don't expect that anymore and are hoping that distributors and filmmakers are using that money to figure out another way to find the audience, so that the traditional advertising is going away, and their cinemas are looking more toward people to bring outreach, grassroots, you know, audience, you know, put your money, if there is any, into finding your audience through the internet. You know, email blasts seem to be, you know, not enough, but you know, creative ways. So I think marketing expectations are changing in a positive way theatrically.
Yeah. Anyone over on this side of the panel, the biggest thing that's changing right now, you know, circa January 2009?
I think something that Matt touched on earlier, which is just that it's the consumer is in the driver's seat now, much more. I mean, there's less of a passive approach to, you know, waiting for a film to come out in the theater or a film traveling the festival circuit. Then there's a pause, then it gets released theatrically, then there's another pause, and then it's released, and all of that is just compressing a lot more because consumers are saying, well, why can't I see this film now? And it seems silly for any kind of a distributor to say, well, you can't because we're waiting another 2 months before.
Yeah, because then,
sell it to them, for God's
then the
sakes,
consumer will say, well, fuck you, I'm going to buy another movie.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So I think that's a big thing right there.
I think also the amount of money that used to be available to acquire independent films, at least, is not really there anymore. So from the filmmaker's perspective, we're not seeing the acquisitions that we used to see, which then puts the onus on the filmmaker to really use the tools that everybody's talking about here, the internet, and really creative ways of utilizing your resources and your money to reach your audience, because ultimately it's your job to get the movie out to them yourself.
Well, Corey, you're making a really important point when we were chatting before the panel, which is that, you know, a lot of filmmakers think about their budget basically leading up to, you know, you got into Sundance and then it's someone else's problem to think about distribution and marketing and building an audience. You were sort of saying, no, you need a budget for that phase, which might be a year, might be 18 months of, you know, getting the film out there and kind of barnstorming around the country.
I think that's true. I think you need to have money to release your movie before you make it, and it's never too early to think about marketing and how you're going to reach your audience, and to start before you even start shooting. That would be
Well, I think also one of the sad changes, you're asking like what's changing on the theatrical, is, you know, the critics, there's a lot of A-list critics who have recently lost their jobs. And, you know, I don't necessarily think that those jobs are coming back. And so you have this group that was sort of the gatekeepers of what is a quality film and what's not. And, you know, I had dinner last night with some of the top critics in the country and or in the world for that matter.
Were you buying because they're all out of a job? Or?
Somebody else was buying for all of us. But I have to say, you know, they're equally concerned. It's sort of what's changing is that nobody sort of knows who's leading who right now. So in that sense, there's a lot of opportunities because there is no sort of linear, this is where you start and this is where you finish.
Well, you know, one thing that I blogged about a few times in the last 2 or 3 months is this idea that, and I'd love to just kind of get some reaction from you, because, you know, this idea that like you come to Sundance and you still do get a lot of critical attention here, whether it's from blogs or it's from Variety or it's from newspaper critics who are out here. And I think for a lot of films, you could argue that their week at Sundance is the most recognition and the most notoriety that they're ever going to get. And then, there's sort of this 6-month or 9-month lull before anything shows up in a theater, and maybe a year before it shows up on DVD. And does that really serve the business of the film well? When, the first week of February, there would be a lot of people interested in buying a DVD or buying a download or somehow experiencing a movie that everyone had just been buzzing about at Sundance.
Well, but there's also a sense of like when we were doing Ballast, Lance and MJ and myself, we had sort of 3 different campaigns that were going simultaneously, which one was the film itself and Lance as a filmmaker and the film that he had made, which the quality and the level of that, nobody could argue. So it was like, okay, here's the film. Then people started saying DIY for whatever that means. If do it yourself, I don't know who does anything themselves anymore. But, that term became sort of this hip thing. So all of a sudden, that's what all the stories were about. So then we built on the film and then the DIY. Then there's a lull in the actual theatrical. That's sort of the quietest time. And then you have the awards sort of era where all of a sudden there's this newfound interest in the films, and then ironically, some of the films that are getting the most attention aren't playing anymore. Mm-hmm. So that's the part where you have to say, okay, how do you connect those pieces together?
Well, I guess that's what I'm asking, and maybe Matt, you want to jump in, is there a problem that we need to fix, that we have all these distribution channels, whether it's theaters or it's, internet streaming directly to the television, or it's, buying a DVD that's produced on demand, and yet we're still kind of living in this old world of, well, we need 4 or 5 or 6 months to develop all these campaigns and to build the website and to start kind of...
No, I mean, my company, the parent company of what I do is Cinetic Media, and we're trying to sell 10 films here at Sundance for traditional, distribution. Hopefully they all do. I mean, last year we sold all the films we had at Sundance, but the fact of the matter is that filmmakers, there's a little bit of a bottleneck because a lot of filmmakers don't want to roll the dice on that kind of opportunity. They want to wait that year, that 2 years, to make sure that every single possible potential traditional buyer has absolutely seen the film and considered it. And what we see on both the traditional Cinetic side and the Cinetic rights management side is sort of having that conversation with filmmakers very early on and sort of say, okay, let's try to capitalize on that momentum, because the fact of the matter is you can't use the old paradigm. I mean, a lot of people in the business, both filmmakers and people in the industry, feel like, okay, well, we've been releasing movies this way for the last, 20 years. There's nothing wrong with it. There is. There's more options than ever before. There's more media at people's disposal than ever before. Audience taste is changing. Accessibility is changing. And you have to change the structure. You have to change the windows. And yeah, it would be great for more festivals to do sort of day and date premieres and stuff like that, because it's only to the benefit of a lot of those filmmakers.
Mm-hmm.
If I can just jump in, I think also, though, it takes time. I mean, you were touching on this before. The attention span now, with having so many options, for the consumer, for entertainment, it's getting shorter and shorter. So you want to capitalize on the attention you get at a festival, but it takes time to plan a release. And anyone who's done that knows that it's a tremendous amount of work, and it takes a lot of sort of I dotting and T crossing. So you need to be prepared ahead of time if you're going to use a festival as a launching pad.
It depends on the release.
Exactly.
I could put you on iTunes next month.
Right, but most people, I think...
No, I know what you're saying,
but the marketing campaign takes, it took us 6 months, and we were absolutely slammed.
Exactly.
And if Ballast could have been released right after Sundance, that would have been the best possible scenario. And if we would have prepared, the next film that I'm preparing now is set up to be distributed right away, right after, there's a huge elephant in the room with this equation, though, is can you get it into a Category A festival? So you have to, the wisest thing to do, in my opinion, is release the thing right after Sundance. Mm-hmm. But can you get in? So what do? Do you spend, I really believe you should put the P&A budget into the production budget, and you should begin the online work months before the release.
Well, I would say
all that 6 months of preparation that we did, which was, it's not DIY, like Stephen was saying. It's a tremendous amount of work by very experienced people that know, that have dinner with the top publicists or the top journalists in the world. And this is very important work that should be done, I think, beforehand.
I would say, just operationally, at least, if you're not going to say to people, all right, you can see the movie now the week after it played at Sundance or South by or Tribeca, at least, you need to have something on your website that's trying to capture like people's email addresses and maybe their zip codes too, so that, when there is a theatrical release
Absolutely.
or there is some kind of tour, you have some data about those interested people.
And this is the Peter Broderick 1,000 True Fans concept, which is invaluable. And if you develop that with your first film, we've captured a lot, but not nearly as much as we should have, because we started with such a handicap.
Yeah.
But now we have those people, and the next film they become. You mobilize those people again. They follow what you're doing the whole years in between.
Yeah.
And
we should actually separate those two things. So Peter Broderick's website is definitely worth checking out, and all of his writing and his bulletins. And then Kevin Kelly, who was kind of the editorial founder of Wired, wrote an essay called 1,000 True Fans, which he's written a couple follow-ups to, and go seek those out on Kevin Kelly's website too.
I misattributed.
No. It was two great ideas, sort of Reese's peanut butter cupped together.
Yeah.
You also I think when you're releasing a movie, you get what you put into it. I mean, in our case, we had a considerable lag between Sundance and when the movie came out in October. But my partner Jennifer and I were working with our producing partners on the movie, Mariana Polka and Jason Ritter, who have a company called Morning Night. And Mariana was the writer, director, star, and producer, and Jason was the star and producer as well. And they went everywhere, every theater. It was any press opportunity. They got a lot of bang for the buck, I think, because they were willing to really go to their audience and meet them and kind of have that discussion. I think that's really essential, too.
Well, I'd love to talk a little bit more about Good Dick and Ballast, just in terms of, so walk us through a little bit. It played at Sundance last year. I mean, walk us through kind of that acquisition interest or no acquisition interest and kind of what you did from there.
Sure. We premiered the movie in dramatic competition last year, and we had come into the festival, kind of hoping for a big sale. We were repped by William Morris, and that was sort of the expectation. And we had made the movie for a really low budget. It was $200,000, all in, and we basically, we got a UK distribution deal, which got us a lot of our money back, and then we're entertaining various offers for North America, which were pretty paltry, and I think we started to feel like, is it really worth it for a small amount of money to give up all of your rights and to sort of lose control in what many people think is the most important part of the process, which is, of course, distribution. So at that time, my partner Jen and I were talking about, could we do this ourselves and, kind of make this happen? And we had another film that had sold at Toronto and had been released through a major company, and we had kind of watched what they had done. And so we sat down with Jason and Mariana and started talking about it, and sort of we put together a budget and a plan, and we hired Richard Abramowitz, who's a sort of amazing booker. He's just absolutely incredible. Everybody knows him, and he has really good relationships. And we decided to use 42 West. They're really, great publicists. And we are working with Peter Broderick, whose name has already come up. He's just knows everything about indie distribution and self-distribution, and he's really a pioneer when it comes to this new business model. And we started planning, and we did the marketing materials ourselves and borrowed the trailer from the UK and tried to be really creative with the amount of money that we had. And we were able to come up with two really kind of innovative partnerships, one with a interactive marketing company called Brightline, and we did a really cool featurette that to promote the movie that ran on IFC and Sundance Channel platforms. And we also partnered with the SEIU, which is the Service Employees International Union, and we had our cast basically doing voter outreach, and the SEIU took on the expense of that and allowed us to kind of travel our cast and do promotion for the movie. So we tried to basically get the most bang for our buck the way we did with our production. And we opened the movie in 7 cities, and now we're working on video on demand and our own run of DVDs for our own website, and also a mainstream DVD release. We're doing a cable premiere. We're doing internet and iTunes release, and we're also.
And are you negotiating all of that yourself?
All of it ourselves, with help from our attorney and from Peter and people that we really trust that are sort of in our brain trust. And we're also planning a college tour for the movie with Mariana and Jason to do sort of a lecture and screening series that will be another source of revenue for us. So
great. So Matt, you were shaking your head a little bit about the iTunes thing. Is that, mean, my understanding is that iTunes doesn't work a lot with individual filmmakers, that they kind of want to work with like New Video or someone who's a bigger distributor.
Price management.
Or CRM, yeah.
Come on. Yeah. No. I think what you mean is you guys working with a company to potentially be on like iTunes and
we're
places
negotiating all the deals ourselves with these aggregators of content.
Yeah, a lot of these places you can't just like pick up the phone and call Steve Jobs and say, hey, especially not right now, and say, hey, I'd like to be on iTunes. They go through very specific aggregators, and there's like only a handful of independent companies that do that. But I mean that's crucial. I mean, what she's saying, not to interrupt, but what she's saying is, I think, very important, and that's kind of what we do in a lot of ways is, let the filmmakers maintain those rights, because the deals right now are really bad. I mean, they just really are. You'll read these reports like Brooklyn's Finest, sells for, 7 figures and all that kind of stuff. Who knows how much it costs? But, the other thing has to do with, all these other films that don't have Don Cheadle and Ethan Hawke and Richard Gere. It's hard for distributors to wrap their head around it. And you have a film that can cost a lot more than $200,000, $500,000, or even more than $1 million that are getting $10,000 offers, $20,000 offers.
And it's taking forever to get to that offer.
Yeah, exactly.
And to collect your $20,000 takes a long time.
And even if you made your movie for $200,000, you don't want to take $10,000 or $20,000.
Yeah, exactly. And because it's not just that it's the $10,000 or $20,000 check up front, but then it's okay. Or sort of up front. And then it's talk to us in about 15, 20 years and, you can have your movie back, or we'll renegotiate.
Or we'll give you a report.
Right. Yeah. So, which is a good segue to Lance.
Actually, I wanted to jump in for just a second. Both Cara and Lance chose to do somewhat of a window release. You did do your theatrical first. You didn't sell DVDs. I mean, would you do it that way?
In my case,
have a choice.
Yeah, it was because we both, I think, I have a very similar path as you, and we came to Sundance thinking, let's try to get a distributor.
Right.
And
so you're saying
we'll give it to them and take care of it, because that's what they do, and they'll take care of us, and we should trust them because they're honest.
Well, and Lance, you did sort of have a deal or almost a deal with IFC at Sundance last year. Can you, I mean, just among friends, why did you decide not to go that direction?
But to address Connie's, to answer your question, I would do it very differently the next time, and planning that right now as I'm writing. So it's I'm a producer on this project too, and I think because I have to be. I think every filmmaker has to think that way these days to be realistic. If you want to get your project made, and if you want to make another one, you have to be able somewhere along the line to be profitable. And so I think it's really incumbent upon all filmmakers to think this is another part of the grueling process of production. Like, you have to think about trucks. It's not very exciting or creative, right? But you have to. You have to think about all these things. So distribution is yet one more mechanical and very important thing you have to think about. And it can be extremely creative, but in a different kind of way.
It should be empowering.
But the window release.
Absolutely. This is the point, to empower yourself.
The window release, though, we didn't have a choice. I mean, we wanted to do the day and date when we first set out, but we couldn't book theaters if we had DVDs out. We didn't have that option.
That's
a big problem.
Which is, and it's probably inevitable, and probably, I don't know how many years before there will be something worked out so that theaters won't feel threatened by the day and date piece, but right now they do.
Or they want a piece of it.
But then would filmmakers choose not to go into theaters if theaters won't have them? So you would bypass the theater?
Yes, absolutely, because there's absolutely no money in theatrical.
Right, no, there isn't. It's true.
It's a money sapping.
Well, but the conventional wisdom is that's your awesome marketing.
It is. It's
If you can get the publicity on a DVD release, I would skip theaters. But
I'm the
changing.
negative naysayer, which is, I just think you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think that you have to be looking forward. But, if you say, I can put my film out on iTunes tomorrow, but you're not going to be nominated for Gotham's and Spirit Awards when your movie goes out on iTunes.
That's a risk. That's a risk that you're taking.
But
not all films are ballast.
No, it's true. And listen, but all of us up here are fortunate enough that that a lot of us work for ourselves, so you can pick and choose. Do you know what I mean? It's like each filmmaker here at Sundance is going to put together their team and who they feel comfortable. My whole point, though, is that these things do mesh into each other. They're not completely isolated things. So you can't argue, well, this film made this much at the box office, but that filmmaker wasn't set up in a certain way. Like they're still influential. A theatrical release
Yes.
doesn't have to be in 25 markets.
Right.
But it should really be in New York and front-loaded.
You can
and
pick the right market.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. MJ, Stephen, and I, and we had Susan Norgett as
So
our
we had
publicist.
great other people.
And Marina Bailey in Los Angeles as our publicist. And can we talk about our secret ally now?
Ooh, this sounds intriguing.
I don't know.
Someone at the Pentagon?
We had a secret ally.
And so anyway, the point is we had a great team of people fixed. I mean, it was very important to me. I'm talking about theatrical, and it's the idiocy of it on the one hand, but the importance of it is exactly what Stephen's saying. And I believed it, and I still do believe it wholeheartedly, that it's at the moment it's the only way you can validate your film, and you can't get a full review. We had after Sundance we had all this great capsule coverage, but it's not a full review. Mm-hmm. And the only way you can have that full coverage is if you have a theatrical release. And those, so
there really weren't full reviews of the film after it played Sundance last year.
Not in the traditional important,
but
outlets.
in blogs and some online sources.
In the online things, but they weren't the right gatekeepers.
And even more
those gatekeepers than
just the reviews is the features. I mean, that's what I was saying. Is on balance, Matt, I hear your point, which is it's a risk. I think that also depends on your own taste and your own instinct.
But we knew we had it after Sundance because it already happened. We got the capsule coverage. We got a taste of. We had a very accurate idea of which critics responded.
You knew the critics were going to respond to a theatrical release.
Mm-hmm. And the value and importance of hiring somebody like Stephen and MJ is that they have intimate relationships with these people, and so they can find out.
Well, listen, it's also it is a game. I mean,
MJ
and I were talking before. We're both on separate foreign language films right now that. Two films that we're both representing are on the short list of the Oscars. Well, you don't know that, obviously, when you pick that film to work on, but you better be a little confident that you think that your film is good, because if not, you're sort of like treading water in there. Now, the fact of out of those 9, which are going to be the 5, we can analyze it to death, and I think our instincts are probably good, but you still always get surprised, is my point.
With any industry, you just have to have your best gut feeling. Really going into it, because it's not a science. This business is not a science.
And also, you have 2 filmmakers on the panel who I have to say, you guys both were passionate and interested in this process. I've worked with a lot of filmmakers who aren't. I mean, they really don't want to know how to get there. They just want you to do it.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's what's really actually, for those of you out there who are making films, if there's one thing personally that you take away from this, it is you're just gonna have to work a little bit harder, because it's a different market. It's not the time or place where someone's gonna overpay. No one's overpaying anymore. First of all, they used to. No one's gonna overpay for your movie and let you sort of rest on your laurels and let them do all the heavy lifting, and they're gonna get you all these Oscar nominations, all that stuff. It just doesn't happen anymore. But
unless you have a secret ally. That's the key. I made a note here. Yeah. Get a secret ally.
But three,
yeah.
As many as you can get.
Or not so secret.
But Matt, I thought
actually, I just want to finish real quick about opening and self-releasing specifically in New York. I agree. It can be very valuable, and it was great to see all the coverage that Lance got as a New Yorker living in New York in the mainstream press. I think you just have to be prepared for the possibilities that it might backfire, because I know tons of filmmakers who self-distribute their film in a theater in New York for 2 weeks because they want that golden New York Times review, and the New York Times hates the film.
And that's why I think you have to scale your distribution. You have to have a bunch of tiers, and you that's what we did. We said, let's put everything or let's put a lot into New York, and don't write any checks past that, and see how it goes. And if it goes well, then we keep expanding. But we prepared that. We prepared the tiers so that we could play it by ear as we went.